welcome everyone. Oh my days. Welcome to another powerful, dynamic, exciting, young and dynamic session. And I am Refilwe Kalidumedisa Kalibisa Lomgana Jeso. Greetings, Kalibisa Lomgana Jeso. I welcome you all. Kinaklaba MC Elena Vandag. So I would like to start off first by welcoming all dynamites from Lesotho, from Burundi, from Kenya, South Africa, anywhere you're connected from. I welcome you and I say you are so dear to us. I would also like to take note of our Delta staff that's connected today. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. I thank you. You are so dear to us. So now, on to the housekeeping rules, leaders. The first one is that make sure that you have a book or an iPad and a pen or just anywhere you're going to write notes, because leaders always are ready to write notes. Leaders keep notes. Also, I would like to remind you that you should always make sure that your gadget is on mute, unless if like one of the facilitators asks you to speak. And also, if you're about to leave the meeting, just please kindly switch off your video for a bit, and then when you come back, you can switch it back on. Also, remember, I know you guys are excited for today's session, so I know you guys will be having a lot of things to say. Like some of you are already typing in the chat box, so the chat box is just there. If you have anything to say, any comments, any questions, you can just type them in there. We have a team that's going through them, so your questions will be responded to. Now, ladies and gentlemen, because before we get to the main course of the meal, let's have an appetizer. An appetizer will be a prayer from Munashe. Munashe, please lead us in prayer before we start off the session.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before we start to pray today, we've got a special section. If you have a prayer request from a personal prayer request, you can direct it to my Zoom inbox, and then I will be praying. Let's close our eyes and pray. Father, Lord, thank you for the precious life you have given us today. We have a special session. May you open our minds. May you be with us throughout the whole session. May you make sure that we're paying attention and we digest and we make sure we use whatever we have learned today in our daily lives, for our mind makes us, and our mind is who we are. We protect it. May you protect it. May you be with us throughout the whole session. May you be with us in all the places we have friends, family, everyone who is in a sick place. May you heal them. May you be with us. May you protect them. May you be with us throughout the whole session, so that we have a successful session in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much for the prayer. Thank you very much for the prayer. I'm sure people have sent through their prayer requests and you're going to be praying for them. Okay, Dynamites, today I would like to welcome you again to our fourth episode of our 12-part series of Take Back Your Life with Ms Joana Masiyiwa. Because I know you guys have been attending from like the week before, like last week, the week before that, and the first week. I know you guys have learned so much and are so keen to be sharing everything that you've learned. So I would like to kindly ask you to send through your key takeaways from the previous week and just, tell us a bit of what you learned, so that today when we accumulate whatever you're going to be taking today, we know exactly where what we learned from last week, and just like keep track of everything. So before we get on to her getting into the session, we're going to be having a video of hers being played before she starts the session. IT team, over to you.
Brain development is much more than a story about biology. From the earliest years, relationships with others play a key role in shaping how our brain grows and develops. Early relationships, where there is abuse and neglect, have a long-term impact on children. A brain that has adapted to survive in a threatening or unpredictable world may not work so well in an ordinary environment. This can create what is called latent vulnerability, where early abusive or neglectful experiences with carers put children at greater risk of experiencing mental health problems in the future. For these children, compared to their peers, common experiences like moving to a new school can feel more daunting and stressful. New faces can appear threatening, while positive social cues can be missed. It can be harder to negotiate new social situations and learn to trust new people. Even fun experiences like joining a new sports team can be challenging. Too much focus on potential threat cues can mean missing out on positive social cues, such as a playful nudge. Or it causes an overreaction, which leads to an increased risk of conflict and sometimes violence. These reactions can increase the likelihood of generating new stressful events. It's harder to deal with everyday challenges when you feel unconfident and anxious inside, and harder to build and maintain relationships. Over time, this can mean a child loses friends and the support of adults, and so misses out on opportunities to grow and develop. This social thinning can increase the risk of mental health problems in the future. Neuroscience research is beginning to shed new light on how vulnerability unfolds over a child's life. All children need care and stimulation from adults who value them and who show them attention and love. These experiences shape a child's brain development. When children face traumatic experiences like abuse and neglect, their brain adapts to help them cope. We know of changes in 3 different brain systems: the reward, memory, and threat systems. Experiences of domestic violence or physical abuse can lead to hypervigilance, where the brain reacts more to threat. This might help a child stay safe in an early adverse environment, but it can cause problems in more ordinary environments. Hypervigilance can best be understood as a pattern of adaptation rather than a sign of damage. Abuse and neglect can also mean a world where a child's basic needs for care and attention are not met. This can shape the brain's reward system, the part of the brain that helps us learn about positive aspects of our environment and motivates our behaviour. Over time, the brain's reward system can learn to respond differently to things like positive social cues. Neuroscience studies have also pointed to changes in the autobiographical memory system, our memory of everyday past experiences. Following trauma, negative memories appear to become more salient, which means they become more prominent than positive ones. And everyday memories can also become less detailed. This is a problem because we need to draw on past experiences to help us deal with new social situations. Neuroscience research is showing how childhood trauma can create latent vulnerability, increasing the risk of later mental health problems like anxiety and depression. This vulnerability is not just located in the child, but arises through their relationships. Helping children who have experienced trauma still requires ordinary boundaries and consequences, but it also requires us to step back and reflect and see behaviour that we find challenging in a different light. A child may simply be doing their best to survive now, with brain adaptations from the past. We know a child's brain has the capacity to continue to adapt. For this to happen, they need our help to build and maintain trusted relationships, manage everyday stresses, and prevent new ones from happening. We need to encourage them to try again and believe things can be different. This is far from an easy task and takes time. Science is helping reframe our understanding of childhood trauma. Seeing children's behaviour in a new light can mean we respond differently. But there is much still to learn. Working together, we can develop more effective approaches that promote resilience and recovery. We can help children build trusting relationships and create opportunities for their brains to adapt in new ways.
Oh, thank you very much, tech team. Participants, I'm pretty sure you have realized that today's topic is going to be on trauma, and I'm sure that you are starting now to type all the things that you've learned from the previous weeks, because I've been taking in the chat box and none of you guys have been typing anything that you've learned from the previous week. So please, can you just type a few things that you've just learned from like the previous week, and probably a few things that you've just learned from this week, from like the video we just watched right now, in fact. And on that note, we also what's going to be talked about, like the trauma and everything, and how a child who grows up with not being loved, not being shown passion and care, can grow to have like mental health issues and whatnot. So I'm pretty sure Ms. Joanne is going to be expanding on that. So without wasting much time, Ms. Joanna, please take us off and just expand on those points and just teach us. We're ready to learn.
Thank you so much, Rafua. I'm so happy to be back with all of you guys. I missed you all last week, but I'm sure you had a really informative session with Dr. Dixon. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then I'll give a little bit of context on the video, a recap of what we learned in the previous session I held, and then we'll move on into trauma and just talk a bit about my experience and some things that have been helpful for me. Okie dokie. So today's session, Take Back Your Life Today, is trauma. And so just to recap the last session that I did, we talked about shame and the idea of toxic shame. Just as I remember, there was one comment asking if there was such a thing as positive shame. Shame in and of itself is a evolutionary response to that we need, but toxic shame, so it's not necessarily positive, but toxic shame is when shame begins to allow us to believe things about ourselves that are not true. And so just to give you a little bit of a recap, we have guilt versus shame. Guilt is I have made a mistake, while shame is I am a mistake. So there's helpful guilt, unhelpful guilt, and shame. And so helpful guilt is a psychological discomfort about something we've done that is objectively wrong. So an example, an S who cheated on an exam and feels guilty. Unhelpful guilt is psychological discomfort against something we've done that is wrong by our unrealistic standards. So for example, Simon forgot a colleague's name and feels terribly guilty about it. That's not something that you should feel guilt about. It's a mistake. Finally, shame is an intensely painful feeling about being fundamentally flawed. Example, Rumbi feels like a worthless person who is wasting people's time and taking up space in the world. Shame is really the foundation of a lot of mental health issues, and toxic shame can lead to depression, mental health issues, and suicidality. It's a chronic condition, and I hope that as we go through this week's session, we can begin to understand more about shame and how shame is impacted by trauma. So I wanted to share with you that video that we just saw so that we could have an understanding of exactly what trauma is. Oh, can you still see my screen? Yes, yes. So I thought that video really aptly illustrated how the impact of trauma, events that are uncomfortable, cause fear, and cause trauma over a long period of time can affect us from childhood to now. A lot of people have experienced trauma. I think probably every single person. I would be surprised if there's anyone in the world who hasn't experienced trauma. But what's not understood sometimes is that it's not all, trauma isn't necessarily always huge events like losing your parents or being in an accident or experiencing a natural disaster. While those things are huge traumas and will invariably shape a person's life, there's also what we call little t's, smaller traumas such as consistent abuse, whether it's verbal abuse or physical abuse or emotional abuse over a long period of time that begins to erode a person's sense of self. So a big T event is one that most people would consider traumatic, such as a plane crash, a sudden and unexpected loss of a loved one. While as a little t is one experienced as traumatic as on a personal level, such that as the loss of a pet or a relationship breakup. A small t can also be, like I said, consistent little shows of abuse, such as name calling that happen over a long period of time. And then as we become adults, they affect the way that we see ourselves, the way that we interact with others, as you saw in the video. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience with trauma. Gratefully, I haven't experienced many big T's in my life. However, in 2019, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And when my psychiatrist first told me that, I thought to myself, how can I have PTSD? I associate PTSD with war veterans or people who've been in tsunamis and hurricanes. How was I, a person who'd lived a very comfortable and privileged life, how could I possibly have PTSD? My psychiatrist explained to me the idea of complex PTSD, where a person can experience small traumas over a long period of time that cause you to have a sense of unsafety, cause you to have what they call hypervigilance, where you're alert all the time and you're distrusting of the people around you in an irrational way. So for example, somebody might say, that's a nice dress you're wearing. And instead of hearing that's a nice dress, I'm hearing that's not actually a nice dress, you're fat and you should go change. And the reason that I have that trauma, have experienced that kind of trauma, is from people weight shaming me when I was very young, either shaming me because of the size of my thighs, calling me things like thunder thighs, people shaming me because of the color of my skin, and over again, all those little tiny traumas added up to so that I had a sense of unsafety within my physical world and emotional world. And so I wanted to share with you the idea of little T's, just so that I could illustrate that trauma is multifaceted and that there's many elements of it. And now, because trauma is such a personal topic, and I know that many people here have experienced varying degrees of trauma, I don't want to necessarily focus on what trauma is, but rather show you some of the tools that have worked for me in battling the trauma, or how I have learned to deal with my post-traumatic stress disorder. I consider myself quite recovered now. Obviously, it's a day-by-day process and choice to live well and be well, but I'm going to show you some of the things that have helped me deal with trauma, and hopefully you can also get something out of it. So there's this book that a close person in my life told me to read. It's called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and this is a quote from the book. But look closely and you'll find that your thinking and behavior are designed to keep the pain going for yourself and for others. If you were truly conscious of it, the pattern would dissolve. For to want more pain is insanity, and nobody is consciously insane. I thought this quote was really potent and pertinent to this specific topic, because oftentimes we get, because of trauma and because of mental health issues, we get stuck in a way of thinking that is harmful to us, that is unhealthy, and that is unproductive. And what we need to remember is that that's not a choice, and we don't need to be so hard on ourselves when we have certain trauma responses to a certain stimulus or a certain occasion or a certain relationship. That's not a choice, but what we can do is, once we recognize the pattern, start to work through it and move forward. So my biggest, I was actually talking to my little cousins about this in the car today. They are fortunate enough to do mindfulness at their school, which I think is absolutely amazing, and every school should do this. Mindfulness has been something that I picked up when I went to a mindfulness camp when I was a leadership camp focusing on mindfulness when I was about 15, and it completely changed my life and the way that I interact with others and relate with my trauma, and especially as a survivor of post-traumatic stress disorder. So what exactly is mindfulness? Mindfulness is a state of non-judgmental awareness of what's happening in the present moment, including the awareness of one's thoughts, feelings, and senses. So when a person is being mindful, it's really living in the moment and taking a moment for what it is. So why this is important in terms of addressing trauma is, with the small example that I gave, the silly example that I gave about if someone says to me, nice dress, and I think that they're saying, you look fat and that dress looks terrible on you. Within mindfulness, I will say to myself, all that's been said to me in this present moment is nice dress. I can take that comment for what it is and move on to the next moment. It's living with a sense of presence into what is happening in that moment, rather than dwelling on the past or the future and having anxiety about things that you may not be able to control. Mindfulness and meditation are sometimes misunderstood. People might use the word interchangeably, but they're very different things. Mindfulness, is a type of meditation, or meditation falls within the realm of mindfulness, actually. Sorry, I said it the wrong way around. And so I'm just going to take you through 8 meditation techniques for mindfulness and how those kind of will help you addressing trauma and other mental health issues that you may be experiencing in any given moment. So the first one is focused attention. It's likely the most common form of meditation that people know of, where in this technique, it uses the breath to anchor the mind and maintain awareness. So you'll focus your attention on breathing. And that's why sometimes I, in the previous sessions, have told us to pause and breathe, and you focus your attention on your breath and your connections with your own body. Specifically the rise and fall of the chest, and you return to your breath when you, is my screen still sharing?
Yes.
Okay, great. You return to the breath when you get distracted or notice your mind to start to wander. So focused attention is really a mechanism where you can return, if you're feeling anxious and worried about something, or you feel discomfort, you can return to that moment of peace by refocusing your attention on your current state physically. The second one, are you able to see the second one, body scan? Sorry, I just went back to presenter mode, so I'm not sure if it's reflecting the same.
Yes, yes, we can see it again.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So the second technique is called body scan. This technique, which uses meditation to connect with the body, involves scanning your whole body. So when we say scanning your body, we mean closing your eyes and thinking from the top of your head, how does the top of my head feel? How are my ears feeling? How is my chest feeling? And noticing the sensations as they move through your body as you focus on each different part. It involves scanning your body from head to toe and being aware of any discomfort, sensations, or aches that exist, which could be indicators of stress or anxiety. So the reason we do a body scan again is to return to that moment and understand, where am I feeling the stress or the distress in this given moment? For example, if you are a person who has previously been in a car accident and a certain song was playing, and part of trauma, a trauma response might be when that song plays, you feel discomfort, or you're brought back to that moment of the car accident. A body scan would be a technique that helps you to refocus, like in focused attention, scan your body and understand, oh, I'm feeling tension in my throat, in my throat or in my chest, and I should breathe through it so that I can return my body to its natural state of non-anxiety. And so the reason that I'm really going through this mindfulness stuff rather than focusing on my specific traumas or the real nature of trauma is that I don't want to re-traumatize anyone or cause anyone to dwell on the things that have been painful for them, because I'm not a mental health professional. And so I don't want to trigger anyone, as we say. And so I'm hoping that as we go through the remaining 6 mindfulness meditation techniques, that we can kind of begin to understand how we can help ourselves and take back our lives, as this series is called. So the next one is called noting. Noting is a mindfulness technique in which you note a particular thought or feeling when you become distracted during meditation. So for example, if you are taking some time to breathe and think about how your day is going, and then you notice that you feel anger or sadness, you are able to remember that, and then noting, and then you can create a space and learn more about our habits and tendencies and the things that are conditioning us to behave a certain way. So for example, I might note that when I was meditating, I felt distracted in my mind because of anxiety, worrying what's going to happen tomorrow, or am I going to be successful in my life one day? And then I note that, and I can reflect and see, oh, so career anxiety is something that's a real stress for me, and then I can begin to address it. The point of mindfulness is really to have a real alignment with what is going on in your mind and your body, so that you can later address those things. And the reason that it's so helpful in trauma is because trauma actualizes itself in many different ways. Sometimes it can be physically through heart palpitations or goosebumps, which is one that I get if I'm having a trauma response. Sometimes I get a lot of goosebumps on my body and I feel very cold. Another way that trauma can actualize itself is through heavy breathing, such as a panic attack. And so by doing mindfulness, you're able to really become attuned with what is going on in your body and what is going on in your mind, and how then you can address those feelings and move forward. The next one is one of my favorites. It's called loving kindness. So instead of focusing on the breath, this technique involves focusing on the image of different people. People we know, people we don't, people we like, people we don't like. We direct well wishes and goodwill first to ourselves and then as a ripple effect to others, which helps us to let go of unhappy feelings we may be experiencing. I think loving kindness is so important as a practice of mindfulness in terms of moments of trauma and distress, but also just even when you're in moments of happiness. It's really focusing on what kind of energy do I want to give into the world? What kind of energy do I want to release from myself and in my thoughts? And it's interesting because even when we think of it from a biblical perspective, we think out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so when you are having that meditation moment with mindfulness and really thinking about positive things, it will come out in your words and in your life at a later stage and really help you to address your trauma and your feelings. Because also if you're unable to do love and kindness, then you can see that there's a disproportionate maybe response to negative things and positive things. And then again, you know exactly what to address. And so I just want to keep reiterating that mindfulness is a tool for us to begin to understand the things that we need to address to take back our lives and take care of our mental health. It's not just a meditation thing or a Buddhist thing that like many people might believe. It's actually a really helpful, scientifically studied technique in regaining your life and really understanding the nature of trauma and anxiety as you experience it on a daily basis. The next one I also really love is skillful compassion. So similar to love and kindness meditation techniques, this one involves focusing on a person you know or love and paying attention to the sensations arising from the heart. It's named this because it's thought to be helpful in opening our hearts and mind for the benefit of people, which in turn fosters a feeling of happiness in our own mind. So I sometimes will think of my little sister Esther. She is just like a ray of sunshine. And when I'm struggling to use some of the other mindfulness techniques, I'll think about her face, her laugh, her smile. And then that brings me back when I'm having a moment of high stress. It can bring me back into a moment of calmness and stillness. And then I can think rationally and address the situation in front of me. Something that I have struggled with in the past is emotion regulation. And so sometimes I have reactions to things that aren't appropriate for what actually happened. So someone might say, oh, if I do hand in something late at work and I am told by my supervisor, oh, you should have handed this in yesterday, I may break down into tears and cry and cry and cry. And my mom sees me and she might think, did someone die? And I'm like, no, I just turned in something late at work. And so that's a disproportionate response to the stimulus. And so practicing skillful compassion and reminding myself in that moment, okay, I did something that I maybe feel guilt towards, but by seeing my little sister's face in my mind and remembering her happiness and remembering her laugh, I'm able to say, okay, the world is bigger than this mistake. I've made this mistake, but I am not a mistake. And so that's why I think mindfulness is super important in this respect, and why I kind of also wanted to come and do trauma and talk about mindfulness in the week after shame, because all of these are so intertwined as we begin to understand our mental health and the complexities of mental health as an illness. I was actually having a conversation earlier today with a friend, and we were talking about how, and it's similar to something I mentioned in the first week, but mental health, like any other illness, occurs in stages. And when you're able to start identifying early signs and symptoms, you can start to heal yourself through doing these exercises such as mindfulness that allow you to really take your mental health in to your own hands. And now, and I like to think of it as like the way that we exercise for our bodies. These are exercises for the mind, so that we are able to regulate our emotions, and we have emotional elasticity, which is the bandwidth and the ability to experience a myriad of emotions and still be okay, or in a myriad of circumstances and not fall to our trauma and become burdened in our hearts because of the things that have happened to us that may have not been in our control. The next one, number 6, is visualization, which visualization kind of also goes, is an element of skillful compassion. So this technique uses visualization to focus on a person or something more abstract to hold attention. So for one of the ways in which I have used visualization is I've done a type of therapy called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And so in EMDR, which is what we call it, you are addressing, it's a way of re-experiencing your trauma and assigning new feelings and emotions to it. And part of it, they say, come up with a safe place, a place that you can return to in moments of high stress and in moments where you're reminded of your trauma. You think about those, you visualize this place, and it will help you to calm down. So for me, there's a park that's right by my childhood home that I used to play at with my friend Savannah and Emma when I was 8, even younger than 8, from ages like 5. And so when I'm having those moments of high stress, anxiety, pain, and discomfort, I will use visualization, visualize that park, visualize and also visualize the feeling of the sand on my feet, visualize the feeling of the wind around, picture the sunset as it sets near the park when I was a child, and that visualization helps me to calm down, and then again return to understand my emotions and address the situation that is in front of me. I think visualization is just such an important skill. I think our minds are so powerful, like the fact that we even dream at night shows us the capacity we have for imagination and creation. And so why not use that tool for as a trauma response and as a way of addressing the difficulties that come with trauma. So number 7 is, this is actually going a lot faster than I thought. So I was hoping that I could hear from if people had any questions from the last 3 weeks, because I know I've been away. And so I have, I'm going to do number 7, number 8, and then I have an exercise for us. And then after that, maybe if we have a little bit of time for some questions, and if the team could, if people have a question or two, if you just type them in the chat, and then the team can send them to me and I can answer them specifically about mindfulness, because I know that this is probably a topic that a lot of people don't know much about. And I can also help provide some resources about mindfulness. So number 7 is resting awareness. So rather than focusing on the breath or visualization, this technique involves letting the mind rest. Thoughts may enter, you may get distracted, but instead of distracting yourself, you pull away from the present moment and simply just live in that specific moment and leave behind those thoughts. And so it kind of, the way that I've been taught resting awareness is to see a thought, kind of pretend you're looking at your mind, and as a thought arises, you notice it and just let it go. So I may be pausing, sitting quietly with my eyes closed, breathing, and then I think, oh no, I have 10 emails that I need to respond to. And then I think, I notice that thought, I notice the feeling that comes with it, and I let it go. And that's another really powerful way of experiencing, practicing mindfulness. Finally, the last one is reflection. So for this technique, you might ask yourself, what are you most grateful for? When you ask yourself this question, you use the second person, because this will discourage you from using your intellectual brain or mind from trying to answer it rationally. So that's something that I've often been told, that I intellectualize my feelings and my emotions. And so by that, they mean that I can understand on a basic level that oh, I'm sad because this thing happened at work, or I'm sad because I had this fight with a friend. But instead of actually feeling the feelings that come with it, I'm just intellectualizing it and rationalizing it in my mind. And I think that's something that when people have experienced trauma, it often occurs. In my experience with trauma, I very much did not feel my emotions and didn't allow, and used substances such as food to drown my feelings so that I didn't have to experience them, and I didn't have to go through the pain of the things that I felt were inadequate about myself. But once I started doing mindfulness, I was able to actually experience those feelings and move through the pain, work through it, and come out on the other side. And I think, like, obviously it sounds a bit wishy-washy, and some people may culturally not understand things like mindfulness. But I just really want to reiterate that for me, it has really worked as a reflective tool and I've done mindfulness over the years. And I was telling my little cousins earlier today, they're 15, 9, and 11. And I was telling them, and they're the ones that do mindfulness at their school. And I was telling them about this mindfulness camp that I went to, how we had to do 3 days of complete silence. And in that silence, we had to do mindful eating, where as we eat, we're thinking about what am I eating? What are the textures? How does this make me feel? And I thought to myself, this is ridiculous. Why? I'm eating a grape. Why do I need to imagine how the grape makes me feel? But the reason that they made us do these exercises was to get into that habit of being in touch with your environment and living in that present moment. The book that I mentioned earlier, the quote that I read, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, it's also a powerful book that really shifts your mindset and allows you to really think about, how can I live in this moment and not necessarily allow the past to swallow me? Because I think, especially when you're dealing with trauma, we can have a tendency to feel so overwhelmed by the painful things that have happened to us, and the pain is real. And I think in speaking about mindfulness and how it's helped me with trauma, I do want to say that feeling those experiences, there's no trauma that is insignificant, whether it's losing a parent, losing a sibling, being in an accident, or simply having someone call you names your entire life, tell you you're not good enough. Trauma is trauma. And what we have to try and do is focus on ways that we can reclaim our lives, reclaim our identity, and live beyond the shame that comes with trauma and traumatic experiences. And so now what we're going to do before we possibly get some questions in is, I have a mindfulness script, and I am going to just take you all through a mindfulness exercise. And so part of mindfulness teaching is that the way that it's been taught to me is, oftentimes you'll have a person who talks you through the mindfulness experience. There's some really beautiful apps out there, such as Headspace, which I use very often. And you're able to do exercises maybe before bed. And there's a free version, and then there's a pay-for version, which is great. I think the pay-for one, maybe you get more access to things, but it's an app that you can download. You can also go on their website, and they have a lot of really great resources about mindfulness. And basically, you have someone with a very soothing voice that takes you through these activities, and a way to breathe, to live in the moment, and to let go of the pain, of the stress, and allow yourself to really heal. So I thought that I would read a script for all of you. So before we start, I just ask everyone to get into a comfortable position. If you're in a group of people, don't be embarrassed to close your eyes. Just really commune with yourself in this moment, and take this moment to take care of yourself and focus on yourself. And and then I'll take us through this. It's quite long. And I know you all hear my voice a lot, but so it's going to be a lot, but I think it'll be a really great way for us to pause and reflect in a different way than we're used to. And I just want to, again, remind us what mindfulness is. It's a moment of being in the present in a non-judgmental way. So don't be hard on yourself if you're not able to focus. Don't be hard on yourself if other thoughts fill your mind. That's part of the process, and it's part of exercising that muscle in our minds that finally allows us to be still and commune in that way. Like it's even reminding me, be still and know that I am God. Like that is meditation in and of itself, being able to wipe your mind of the stresses and pain and worries of everyday life and just be. So I'm going to pause for a little bit and then we'll get it stuck into this exercise. So I want to say, start by settling into a comfortable position and allow your eyes to close or keep them open with a softened gaze. Begin by taking several long, slow, deep breaths, breathing in fully and exhaling fully. Breathe in through your nose and out through your nose or mouth. Allow your breath to find its own natural rhythm. Bring your full attention to noticing each in-breath as it enters your nostrils, travels down to your lungs, and causes your belly to expand. And then notice every out-breath as your belly contracts and air moves through the lungs, back up through the nostrils or mouth. Invite your full attention to flow with your breath. Notice how the inhale is different from the exhale. You may experience the air as cool as it enters your nose and warm as you exhale. As you turn more deeply inward, begin to let go of noises around you. If you're distracted by the sounds in the room, simply notice them and then bring your attention back to your breath. Simply breathe, and as you breathe, not striving to change anything about your breath. Don't try to control your breath in any way. Observe and accept your experience in this moment without judgment, paying attention just to each inhale and exhale. If your mind wanders to thoughts, plans, or problems, simply notice your mind wandering. Watch the thought as it enters your awareness as neutrally as possible. Then practice letting go of the thought, as if though it were a leaf floating down a stream. In your mind, place each thought that rises on a leaf and watch it as it floats out of sight down the stream. Then bring your attention back to your breath. Your breath is an anchor you can return to over and over again when you become distracted by thoughts. Notice when your mind has wandered. Observe the type of thoughts that hook or distract you. Noticing is the richest part of learning. With this knowledge, you can strengthen your ability to detach from your thoughts and mindfully focus your awareness back on the qualities of your breath. Practice coming home to the breath and with your full attention, watching the gentle rise of your stomach on the in-breath and the relaxing letting go on the out-breath. Allow yourself to be completely with your breath as it flows in and out. You might become distracted by pain or discomfort in the body, or twitching or itching sensations that draw your attention away from your breath. You may also notice feelings arising, perhaps sadness or happiness, frustration or contentment. Acknowledge whatever comes up, including thoughts or stories about your experience. Simply notice where your mind went without judging it, pushing it away, clinging to it, or wishing it were different. Simply focus your mind and guide your attention back to your breath. Breathe in and breathe out. Follow the air all the way in and all the way out. Mindfully be present moment by moment with your breath. If your mind wanders away from your breath, just notice without judging it. Be it a thought, emotion, or sensation that hooks your attention, and gently guide your awareness back to your breathing. As this practice comes to an end, slowly allow your attention to expand and notice your entire body, and then beyond your body to the room you're in. When you're ready, open your eyes and come back to fully alert and awake. The breath is always with you as a refocusing tool to bring you back to the present moment. Set your intention to use this practice throughout your day to help cultivate and strengthen your attention. So I hope you all enjoyed that activity. It was a little bit quick, but that was my first time guiding people through it. I'm usually the one on the other side doing the breathing. But I hope that that was really helpful to all of you. And hopefully if there's some questions, let me just check. I can answer any of those if we have a chance to do that. Okay, so wait. I think I've received some questions. Can someone who got the aspect of body scan as mindful skill reiterate on that? Okay, so let me go back to, because I have notes with me that'll also help me answer it better for you. So body scan was second. So as I said before, this technique uses meditation to connect with the body. So it involves scanning your body. So starting from the top and saying, I feel my eyebrows, I feel, and you don't have to actually say it in your out loud or say it in your mind, but noticing your eyebrows, noticing your eyelids, noticing your eyelashes, your cheekbones, your face, your lips, your cupid's bow, your chin, your neck, and kind of following that feeling as you notice each part. And the reason that we do that as a mindfulness technique is it takes a lot of focus and attention to focus on each part of the body and the brain, each part of the body using your brain. And so by doing that, you're able to refocus your attention on something that is calming and restoring for you, rather than worrying about thoughts that you may not be able to change or control. So I hope that's helpful in understanding. And also, as you do a body scan, you can notice where stress might sit in your body. There's a very interesting book called The Body Keeps the Score. Actually, we'll do a little bit of a review on it next week and add some interesting things that I've learned from it as we continue and talk, because next week we're going to talk about addiction and codependency. And so what's really interesting what that book is about is how trauma is stored actually in the body. I would have actually just talked about this next week, but I'll just give you a little bit of a snippet. Trauma is stored in the body, which means that a lot of the times the things that we experience and go through that are painful and difficult and cause discomfort and feelings of unsafety will often be stored in different parts of our body as a way of protecting ourselves. So you might find that a person who may be a victim of sexual violence may gain a lot of weight because their body is trying to protect themselves on a fundamental survival level. Another thing somebody may do is if you are in a high stress situation, you may feel like you can't breathe even though you can. And that is your body's responding to the experience of stress, distress, and trauma. And so by doing a body scan, you're able to identify, okay, the feeling of stress or trauma or distress is sitting in my throat right now. How can I breathe through it? So we do the body scan to identify where in our body our distress is coming from, so we can address it and let it go through breathing. Breathing is the most fundamental technique in mindfulness and in distress tolerance. As another thing that I'll talk about that's been helpful for me, not this week and further weeks as we drive deeper into understanding mental health, is dialectical behavioral therapy. And I'll just explain a little bit what that is. And there's a guest that I'm trying to bring who is a DBT expert that can speak to all of you and kind of help you to understand what it is. But anyhow, I'm rambling now, but I just wanted to answer that question. Another question I have is, are thoughts and imagination functions of mind? So yes. Functions of mindfulness or functions of the mind? I'm not really sure what that question's asking, because yes, thoughts and imaginations, they originate in the brain. Our brain is a powerful, complex tool that it is the headquarters of our body and is responsible for all the elements of our lives. Like as I speak right now, my brain is computing words to try and express exactly how I'm feeling and how I'm trying to communicate with all of the people who are currently online. So yes, the mind is a function of, the imagination is a function of the mind. And then, can you help in the explanation of reflection? Okay, so I'll go back to reflection. It was the last one. So for this technique, you ask yourself, what are you most grateful for? What good thing happened today? And so reflection is a really great tool that helps you to be aware of the feelings, not as thoughts that arise when you focus on the question. So rather than reflection it's not necessarily about answering the question and saying, oh, I'm grateful for my dog, I'm grateful for the A I got on my exam, but rather addressing the feelings that come as you ask those questions. So for example, you may ask yourself in your mind, what am I grateful for? And start to feel anxious. So you can take note of that and then address with yourself, maybe by journaling, because that's another thing I didn't really mention, was that mindfulness really works in conjunction with a lot of other tools, such as journaling, such as even exercise, mindful eating. All of these things work together. And so reflection is a tool that you can use to kind of in tangent with body scanning, for example, where you ask yourself a question, and as you scan your body, you say, oh, I'm feeling anxious, I'm noticing anger, as I ask that question, or as I think about a specific person. And so you're able to kind of the point of mindfulness is to give you a starting point in a non-judgmental way to experience what's happening to you in this very moment. Okay, so another question we have, sorry that I'm bringing up my phone to answer the questions. How do you work through disproportionate responses? Like, let's say you cry so much, even about the slightest thing, and the biggest things too, and sometimes it feels so much that you can't stop crying. How do you work through disproportionate responses like that? So I have a lot of experience with that. One of the issues that I have disproportionate responses to a lot of anxious moments, and it's just part of the mental health illness that I have experienced throughout my entire life. And so sometimes when somebody says one thing, but a sibling of mine might say something, or my boyfriend or my mom, and I get so highly emotional. And the thing that I've had to learn, and I'm still learning, is emotion regulation. And so emotion regulation is when you learn to not necessarily control your emotions, but to address your emotions in a way that is appropriate to what is happening. So if somebody dies, it's completely normal to cry and cry and cry so much, as explained. But when you are reacting in such a strong way to every single thing, there has to be a begin to address where are those feelings coming from, and maybe consider seeing a professional, because there's a lot of other disorders that could be the issue, and you might need to be medicated, or you might need some talking therapy, or to join a group such as Codependence Anonymous, where people address their emotions and the disproportionate response you may feel. What works for me is attending Codependence Anonymous. It's an online fellowship group that uses the 12 steps. The first step, we admitted that we were powerless against people and that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And so by using the tools of Codependence Anonymous, and talking to my sponsor, who's a person who's been through the 12 steps and helps you to reflect on and go through the steps, answering questions about yourself that allow you to dig deep into, why do I feel the way that I do? Why am I responding the way that I am? Because often you'll probably find that the root of the crying so much, at least in my case, the root of my crying so much when certain things happened, was because it was a trauma response. And when I say trauma response, I mean something else in my past happened, and my body and mind is reminded of that. And as a consequence, when something small that slightly reminds me of that, my emotions would completely outburst. And so if someone made a comment, any kind of comment on my appearance or what I was wearing, I would get so upset, because previously someone had said to me, you're unattractive because you're a Black girl and you have fat lips and a big nose. And so now any comment about my appearance brought back those feelings. And so I had a disproportionate response, even to someone saying, oh, you're wearing a lot of lipstick, or someone saying, oh, do you, oh, what color, where do you get your makeup from? I would think I'm under attack at any given moment. And so in terms of emotion regulation, mindfulness has helped me. Dialectical behavioral therapy has helped me. Attending Codependence Anonymous has helped me. Reflecting and talking to my family and friends and just explaining myself when I get to that level of emotion has helped me. I think mental health issues can be so isolating. And I was talking to my older sister, Tanya, this morning, and we were just saying how even just sitting with each other and communing in that way, talking about how we're feeling, allows other people to show us compassion and for us to also have self-compassion. Self-care is so important, but as my cousin Michaela says, community care is just as important. And so maybe in those kind of moments, talking to someone you trust or a professional may also be helpful. Sorry, I rambled on with that one, but I just thought it was a really important question. Thank you for whoever asked it. I think I have time for a little bit more. I think I see 2 more questions here. How do you get to understand self? I've been trying to lately, but it hasn't been working. I know I'm not okay, but I can't see the source of the pain. Wow, that is a big question. And I don't obviously know who asked the question, and I don't know all the answers. Again, I'm not a mental health professional. I can share with you how I have began to have a sense of self and what has worked for me in discovering my sense of self. And so for me, when I was at Yale, I really suffered from imposter syndrome, which is what I explained in the first session of the series. I felt like I didn't deserve to be there. I felt like I wasn't as good as my peers, and I felt like I was not enough. Who I am was inadequate. And in that, I lost all sense of self. I wasn't able to see the good things about myself. I could only see the negative things. And now that coupled with trauma from the past, where people had said certain things to me that hurt me, it made me a very hard person. And it was hard for my family to get through to me. It was hard for my friends to get through to me, even to make friends, because I was carrying so much pain. And I think something that is beautiful about mindfulness as a practice is that it allows you to notice the discomfort that you're feeling. Something about emotions, and I'm actually going to do a session about naming emotions, because that's something that a lot of us struggle with. There are 8 core emotions, and such as joy, sadness, anger. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. Jealousy is, I think, one of them. But to be able to recognize what an emotion is the first step that I found in addressing them. And so by doing mindfulness, I could feel like, ooh, I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling angry. Now I've named my emotion, I know what it is, and I can address it to move forward. Now, in terms of the part about finding a sense of self, I think that in this day and age, at least in my experience, what's helped me is I feel like often we're so inundated with information about everyone else's life. And I suffer from comparison disorder, where I compare myself to everyone around me. And I think that sometimes I do that to my own detriment. And that is how I have experienced losing my sense of self, by being so comparative about, am I as thin as her? Am I as smart as her? Is my job as impressive as him? Do I have as much success as this person? Am I as beautiful as that person? Is my relationship as amazing as those people? And in comparing myself, I lose the sense of the things that I'm good at. And I think it's so important. And it goes back to what we did actually a couple of weeks ago, is affirmations. And doing affirmations is a way of manifesting the life that you want, but also reminding yourself the things that you're good at. Sometimes I'll look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, damn, like, yeah, I'm that girl. Or I look at myself and say to myself, you are smart, you deserve everything that you have, you are brilliant. And remind myself like, ooh, that was a really good Y&D session I did. I spoke really well, and give myself a pat on the back. And by rewarding myself when I do things that I'm proud of, or when I do things that other people even tell me they're proud of, I'm able to regain that sense of self and individuality, because ultimately we are all unique. There's no one who has exactly your same thoughts, your same face, your same DNA, even twins. And so I think that remembering my uniqueness has helped me, remembering that I'm one of a kind, and also remembering that God loves me. I may go through this world completely alone, but I have the comfort and knowledge of that the Holy Spirit lives in me. God loves me unconditionally, even when I do and say the worst things. And trust me, like my mom always says this to me, she's like, I have done the worst. I've done worse things than you. I've said worse. And I know God loves me and knows all my thoughts anyway. So I don't even have to apologize to God, because that love is unconditional. And that helps me stand in my sense of self. So I hope that my answer and what works for me could be helpful to you. But just know that whoever asked that question, I'm thinking about you, and I'm hoping that you're able to gain your sense of self. And also remember, we're all so young. Like, I'm 24. I know I'm a spring chicken. I am young and I don't have all the answers, and that is okay. It is okay to not know who you are when you are young. It is okay to not know who you are when you are 40. Like, we are complex being, and everyone is living every day for the first time. So it's okay not to know all the answers. And that is something, remembering that is something that really, really helps me. That my mom, my dad, my friends, everyone is doing today, the 1st of October 2022 for the first time. And so I think I have time for one more question. Sorry, tech team or someone, could you let me know how much time I have?
Oh, you just have like one more, you just have like time for like one more question, and that's it.
Okay. I have a few questions, but I'll just pick one of them.
But also, I think it like depends on how long you take on one question. So probably if you're like gonna be responding.
Okay,
to like
yeah. Okay, so there's 2 questions that I think I can answer. So the first one is, someone said, sometimes when one is stressed or experiences trauma, one loses appetite. How is this connected? I think I'll be able to answer this better when I go through the book, The Body Keeps the Score. I might actually make an entire session, devote an entire session, not next week, because next week we're going to do addiction and codependency, but the week after, about how, because it fits in well with how we've now talked about shame, we've talked about trauma, we've talked about addiction, which is the way in which we respond or we cope with trauma, shame, depression, mental illness. And so what happens is we have maladaptive coping mechanisms and techniques. So that is ways in coping that are not good for you, that you're grasping to. And so with anxiety, I think it actually is, I'm going to actually look up the exact thing, but and let you know, because I think that's a very valid question. But I think it is a response from your body. So when certain things happen, like think about the feeling of disgust when you see, or fear, your body releases certain chemicals given the stimulus that you experience. So for example, in moments of fear, you may have adrenaline pumping through your body that helps, and it is a chemical that our brains create that helps us to experience those emotions. Another one that our body creates is called cortisol, that comes in moments of high stress as well, that our body releases. And so I'm pretty sure that it's probably another chemical response that the body utilizes to protect itself. A lot of the trauma responses that we have are just ways of our body trying to protect itself in that moment, or your body trying to signal to you that you're struggling, that you, even if your mind can't tell. So for example, having a panic attack and your heart feeling like you're having a heart attack, maybe your body just trying to tell you you're under distress, please listen to me, even if your mind can't get that. And so then the last question I'll ask is, let's say I get in touch with my feelings and realize that I may be suffering, say, from fear of abandonment or anxiety about losing someone. Should I open up to the people I'm afraid of losing? Should I try to deal with that on my own? Now, again, I want to say I'm not a mental health professional. I can only share my perspective and how I might deal with a situation such as that. And so I have had terrible fear of abandonment my whole life. If I'm in texting a friend and they don't reply, well, not anymore, but in the past, if I was texting with a friend and they didn't reply, I would be thinking, oh my goodness, they hate me. Did I say something wrong? Did I do the wrong thing? And I would then get stressed and then sometimes end up in fights with my friends, being like, thinking about a message that they sent and bringing something up when it turns out they were actually just busy or their phone battery died. And so for me, what has helped with my fear of abandonment and anxiety is, number one, a technique called thought blocking. Thought blocking is when negative thoughts come, rationalizing them in your mind. So if I'm thinking, oh, my boyfriend's going to break up with me, I have to say to myself, has anything happened that would indicate that? No. Is it the end of the world? Will I die? Will anyone die if he does break up with me? No. And then I'm able to cycle back and say, you know what? Right now, whether or not he breaks up with me is something that I am not in control of. And so I have to relinquish control and let life happen the way it's supposed to happen. And it sounds really difficult, but honestly, for me, it's been really freeing to let go of situations and circumstances that I am not in control of. And then, so that's what I do with the fear of abandonment. I ask myself those pivotal questions. Is this fear rational? And the thing is, with feelings, is something can feel so painful and so real. You can really feel like you're going to lose someone. You can really feel like you're alone, but you have to, this is where you use what's called, and I'll talk about it in dialectical behavioral therapy, the technique that's worked for me is, it's called wise mind. Now, wise mind is the nexus of your emotional brain and your logical brain. So your emotional brain is where your feelings are stored, where you're thinking, oh my goodness, he's not responding, or I said the wrong thing. And then logical brain is where you're able to say, all I said was this, he hasn't responded yet. I don't know what he's going to say. And so I'm going to use my wise mind, which is I'm allowed to feel my feelings, but I cannot let them control me. I cannot let them consume me in a way that becomes detrimental to me. And so that's where then after that, what I would do is once I've gone into wise mind, I say, I'm still feeling anxious. I'm still feeling scared. Let me do a body scan and see where in my body that fear is coming from. And then if it's coming in my chest, sometimes I'll massage my chest a little bit. If it's coming in my throat, or I feel like I'm choking or something, then I do my breathing, deep breathing, and I'm able to restore myself to sanity. And what's great with these, the last thing I'll say is some of these online fellowships, I'll actually include a link at the end next time. But what's great with some of these online fellowships is that it's all about restoring yourself to sanity. So Alcoholics Anonymous, and Emotions Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, all of those, or Eating Disorder Anonymous, all of those fellowships are about restoring yourself to sanity. So I would definitely, and it's free. The meetings are basically 24 hours. You can find an online meeting at any time, and there's some in-person ones too. And with those kind of fellowships, you can really go and talk to people that have the same issue as you and share your story and hear other people's stories and know that you are not alone. Even when you feel alone, you're not. So thank you so much for the session. It's been very healing for me. I want you to all know that as much as this helps you guys, it really restores me to be able to share, to be able to hear from other people, and also to know that I'm not alone, because it's a mental health, it's a choice every day to take care of my mental health. So thank you all so much. And I'm just gonna hand over back to our lovely host, and I will see you guys next week.
Thank you very much, Ms. Joanna, for coming through. Thank you very much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to come teach us about mental health and to just make us aware of some things that we may not be aware that we're going through. Thank you so much. Mental health is very important, like you emphasized, and I hope people you took notes from today and you did learn a few things, if not everything, because everything that you talked about is very important. Anyway, thank you, Ms. Joanna, for coming through. Okay, now Dynamites, moving on, I would like to talk about this week's weekly announcements, right? So one, remember to like, comment, and share Young and Dynamics Facebook posts on Facebook, on Instagram, and on the side channel. Also remember to like, comment, and share on ABC's Prosperous Minds on Twitter and on Instagram. Also remember that YND is still present on YouTube, so it would be very good for you to just go on YouTube, visit the page, subscribe, and just watch a few videos that are there. I'm pretty sure you're also going to be learning, because that's basically what YND is about. It's there to empower us, it's there to teach us. So just go on YouTube and just subscribe to the channel and learn. Also remember that Global Intercessors is still open 24/7. Just log in to pray for yourself, to pray for Africa, to pray for your country, literally anything that you may want to pray for at any time. Just connect and just pray. Also, that's it from me, Dynamite. So I'm gonna be seeing you next week, same time, same place. Peace out. I love you, and take care of your mental health. See you next week.
On the same